see so many of you. As David said earlier, this is a pretty intensive one-day session. You have heard a lot of stuff. If I can just very quickly summarize it, I think I think the topics that were covered by Eugene and then Alfred and also Mr. Ho, the two Mr. Ho's, and of course David, very much focuses on what the kind of things that you should be looking out for when you make an investment. I suppose what drives many of you here is that you are interested in property and you want to do it smartly, right? So whether it's timing or connectivity, you've heard from Chin Soon and Ishmael, what difference connectivity makes to property values and how you can see a boom when countries are connected, cities are connected, towns are connected. And of course you heard from also Alfred, the risk that comes about when you don't take care to watch your interest rates exposure because you borrow, right? When you borrow, you have to pay, and there's a risk in today's environment that rates will go up and it may affect your repayment. And of course, David also pointed out, while there are a lot of pros to looking at the commercial sector, there are, as he put it, risks and pitfalls that one should be aware of. Okay, so I want to open up the time for the audience to ask your questions. I think as MC said, there are roving mics around. Please just identify yourself and then ask your questions. All right? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Peter. I have a question for Ishmael. Just now, you say that there's some companies that's around those lands that may be beneficial. I think I missed that information if you have said it.
Sorry. Yep. Actually, I forgot my closing statement regarding that. It's because those information, you can actually find them in the book. Okay, but just to name a few, you will notice at the end of the day, all these plantation owners, who are they? For example, some of them are Samdabi, some of them are IOI. So in our book, we also highlight which plantation, how, where, what are the possible areas to look at. So in that manner, you can see. And then if you are those kind of really, really serious investor, or you are a developer or agent yourself, what they normally do is they take a Ho Chin Soon highly detailed map and actually study the smaller parcel of land as well. They also study where are the land that are being cut through by roads. So these are also other potential. These are not for what we call this the man on the street. These are more for the developers, the agent. They are doing a big of land deal. So they use our map, look at ownership, look at property transaction, then they make their decision. Those are some of the things that we do. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Don't know Malaysian audience like that. Very quiet.
Malaysian audience, they straight away ask, so how price this year, up, down? Where to buy? Very direct, straightforward. Since we did mention about MRT2, maybe just let me add a little bit. Throughout the years also, of course, Malaysia being just next door to Singaporeans, you all has always been asking a lot about Iskandar Malaysia. And then the interest, because it's only natural when you see a bull run, after that people become apprehensive. So next, a lot of Singaporeans also are asking me about KL. Now to answer their question is a bit tricky sometimes, because you ask, okay, you want to talk about Greater KL investment. Then I start to ask you names, Wangsa Maju, Jeras, Puchong. Are you familiar? Most of it you are not familiar. So you still go back to the usual place of like Bangsa, Mount Kiara, KLCC area. So in that sense, your investing opportunity is limited when you compare to a Malaysian. But at the same time, not to say opportunity is not there. I also come across Singaporeans who told me, I'm looking at this project in KLCC area. This is the price. And to be frank, I don't really care if I can cover my repayment or not. Then I understand straight away, because it's more like, one, a trophy property. Number two, they know Malaysia property prices has always been very steady. You won't see like what you just saw, the presentation. Government can really play a big role in pressing down the price. But Malaysia side, if you look at our data, and usually I like to share also the price index, you will realize Malaysia property market has always been steady growth. So that's why Singaporeans are also looking at putting their money in KL area. So that's just some of feedback, what I get from Singaporeans.
Thank you. There are two questions here. The first one is directed to Chin Soon and Alfred. I'm not entirely clear what this means. But let me read the question out to you, and then maybe you can help us all decipher. What will be the effect of 1 MDB on currency and real estate prices? I'm not sure because 1 MDB is now under a lot of scrutiny. It's an investment arm of the government of Malaysia, Finance Ministry, directly under PM Najib. There has been a lot of rumors swirling around it. So I'm not sure whether the question is asking the impact of all those rumors and investigation that's now being done or promised, or the whole investment vehicle as a whole. I'm not quite sure, but perhaps I could pass to Chin Soon and then later Alfred.
Well, for the man in the street, when they don't have the basic facts about property development, about alignments of MRT and the reasons of doing it, they jump to conclusion. It's quite okay. Even Malaysians fall into this drama, of who is doing what, who is involved and so forth. Firstly, if we look at 1 MDB, it is a government vehicle. And if you follow the news very carefully, you look at assets and liabilities, reasonably healthy. Perhaps the timing of the cash flow coming in. So I think it's a problem of cash flow. So I don't have further details about the cash flow. But when in relation to the property projects of 1 MDB, then I can give an opinion. There are two major projects of 1 MDB. One is TRX, Tun Razak Exchange. And Tun Razak Exchange is a place where they have the blue line, the Sungai Buloh Kajang line, interchanging with the Sungai Buloh Sedang Putrajaya line 2. As people in Singapore or Hong Kong knows, when two important lines interchange, it is a powerful station. People will ask, how about the high-speed rail putting into TRX, Tun Razak? The answer is no. The site is too valuable. Prices in Golden Triangle has gone up to 3,000 ringgit plus. Recent transactions, last month, this month, still 3,000 plus. When compared with Singapore, in Singapore, they count by Sing dollars per plot ratio. Here, Malaysia, I buy, then my plot ratio can be 10 now, for example. So it's actually not high. That is TRX, and they have infrastructure. Unfortunately, because of the time constraint, we can't show you. I didn't have time to prepare for you. If I've known you wanted to ask about MDB, I would have shown you the aerial pictures taken in January of the site, of the immensity of the project and the proximity at the edge of the Golden Triangle. And also details of like land lease Australian, billions have been committed, and even one of China's bank has promised, signed to build an office tower, simple because I think they want the high-speed rail job lah. And the China president has also met with Najib and so forth. Now that is TRX, a site which is unbelievably good. According to press report, long time ago, they came out and the Prime Minister said this land does not belong to Gafar Baba. Gafar Baba was the deputy prime minister. Everybody was fighting for it. And then it became not a political, didn't go to politician, but become a vehicle. That means it belongs to the rakyat, the people of Malaysia. Second, the most also important where they pick the high-speed rail is the Sungai Besi military camp. Now, people who are not in the real estate line, and especially if they are not map makers like Ho Chin Soon Research, we are map makers. The moment they announced in April 2014, more than a year ago, that is the site of the high-speed rail, immediately you knew they have no choice but to change the alignment from the Pandan area right down to Sungai Besi, because if the high-speed train comes and then you come out, you are stuck in the traffic jam. From TRX, the connectivity of the MRT is only 3 stations or 2 stations from Golden Triangle. Any of you here, assuming it starts from Jurong East, takes the high-speed rail, 1.5 hours, you step out. You step out at Sungai Besi, the MRT station is waiting for you. 3 stations would be 5-6 minutes, and you are in Golden Triangle. You are in Bukit Bintang, you are in KLCC. A lot of people didn't know. They thought it's a political move to move the. That has nothing. The SPAD people, the MRT corporation people, they are professionals. They are non-political. All right, just to make that clear. Because the perception, you change alignment because that was, you have some difficulty in cash flow. That's not true. We already knew the moment announced, North Indonesia, they have to. And the Pandan area will come at the Circle Line. So what is happening is, next month they are going to have a 3-month public objection display. You come to see Ishmael Ho. He's usually invited by a few other event organizers here besides SPH. As he said, the moment he said got free map, people don't leave the hall. So you get the latest update of the effect of the infrastructure coming to Greater KL. And this is part of the government's transformation program. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time. Next time you give me enough time, I can explain because I'm non-political. This one, politicians come and go. We pay our tax, we live a good life. I have a son who has given me happiness. Today, I have no alarm clock. What time? 9:30 already. Oh, wake up, okay. I don't switch on my phone. That is more important than what they say. A lot of half-truths, stretching, doesn't matter. It is a project for the benefit of the rakyat of Malaysia. And when the train runs, I don't fly anymore. I will come down more often.
Know that it gives us another drama to follow. For those of you who follow, actually Malaysia politics quite exciting. No? But since this is not an event about politics, I think we will refrain from that. But I think people are concerned. Maybe that question is trying to see, would it affect Malaysia government reserve? Of course, there's still a lot of audit going on, but that is just one segment of Malaysia. Malaysia generally is a big country. They do have a lot of huge natural resources. But it's also because of that, one of their major export is palm oil, and that is very much affected by the oil price. Because when the oil price drops, right, palm oil, which can turn into other alternative oil or petroleums, the prices are also affected. So this will in turn affect Malaysia government reserve. Okay, so earlier I mentioned ringgit is one of the ASEAN currency that has fallen the most against Sing dollars. So the question here is, would it fall further, or is there opportunities? Now, I just want to also put in a caveat. Do not just take what I just mentioned and then you immediately go and buy a Malaysia properties. But what I'm just trying to highlight to you, you just imagine, we just take 1 Sing and 2 can change to 2 ringgit. Okay, 1 Sing change to 2 ringgit. Assuming you are to buy a property in Malaysia, let's say for 1 million ringgit, again, just for hypothetical. So that means to say you only pay 500,000 Sing, right? But the thing is that you take leverage. So assuming you can take a loan of 80%, so your loan is only 20%, right? So imagine if, let's say, the currency appreciate by 10%, what do you think is your return on your capital? 50%. Because you only come out 20% to buy something that's 1 million, but the currency goes up by 10%, your return on capitals is 50%. But vice versa, if let's say it come down, you can also lose 50% on your down payment. So which is why this investments is a high risk one, but if you aim it correctly, you catch the right trend, the right directions, the reward can be tremendous. So it's only recommended for those of you who have a high risk investment profile. Because I do agree with Mr. Ho that MRT is always a regeneration factor. If you just look at Singapore, right, MRT definitely provided us a lot of convenience infrastructures, especially now we have the ERP everywhere. Do you know what does ERP stand for? No? Oh no, got camera, so I shall refrain from that.
David, here's a question for you. Which is better, strata title offices or commercial REITs?
REITs or strata title office, right?
Yeah, which is better?
Okay. Let me say this. Actually, it's not a very apple-to-apple comparison. You're actually comparing apple to orange because a commercial REIT is still a financial product. If you buy into a REIT, it is still a financial product. When you buy a strata title office, it's actually a real estate product. But this is a financial product, right? Even though commercial REITs invest in commercial or industrial property, so you indirectly own, okay? But there are two different things, okay? There are two different things. I'm not saying that you cannot buy REITs, no. I think if you buy into certain good one, I think they're quite good, they pay good dividends, they got good potential for capital gain. But it is actually more on, you are now actually working with, investing with, and you're monitoring actually the shares market, which REITs can be like that one. You know, even though they buy property, but because it's a financial product, it can be like that one. In one day, it can be like that also. But in real estate, you won't find in one day like that. If you don't find in 1 month like that also. It's a general trend, right? It's a general trend. You can go up. Of course, you will come down. But so it's a general trend also, you will come down. So when you buy a property, you don't monitor the market every day. You will still be safe, you know, as long as you check the price once a month, you're still safe, right? But if you buy a commercial REITs, then it's a different story. You're buying a financial product, you're buying shares, you're buying, you have to monitor the price like that one. So it's two different skill sets, it's two different kind of thing. It's not an apple to apple. I'm not saying you cannot buy a commercial REITs, but actually when you buy a commercial, it's a financial product and you don't actually directly own that property. It's still a piece of paper, right? But when you buy into a physical real estate, it's real. That's why it's called real estate. No matter what, you don't just own a title, you really own that physical property. So it's two different things, right? So my call to you is you can invest in both. You can invest in both. If you're good in shares, I'm happy for you. Make your millions in REITs or whatever. But I think all of us, indeed most Singaporeans, will never want to go without a real estate portfolio. You must agree with me. We don't just want to own one property for our own self. We want to own investment properties, right? So I think this is an aspiration that we all have. And at this moment, this is how I look at it. I think it will be quite difficult for you to make money in residential, right? For many reasons. One of the reasons I've just explained just now, one of them is actually government policies, okay? So you probably want to look into commercial investment at this moment, right? Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Other questions? Yes, sir. Maybe I'll just give the gentleman a chance.
Who was it who raised their hand? Thank you. My name is Andrew. I have a question for Mr. Ho Chin Soon. When you said, I was intrigued by your statement that when the high speed between Singapore and KL starts to run, up and running, that property values in the Iskandar area will be much higher than KL, those in KL. What is the differential in property value today between KL and Iskandar, you know? And what would be the potential difference if it's much higher in Iskandar over those in KL? That is the first part of my question. The second part is, do you have any opinion on what was released yesterday in the Maybank report about property values and telling Singaporeans to be more cautious in investing in the properties in the Iskandar area? Do you have a take on that report? And what would be your advice to Singaporean investors considering to invest in Iskandar in the light of so many projects that have been announced, you know, and the tremendous oversupply coming up in the next couple of years? Thank you.
There's a lot of questions there. First, I'd like to ask the audience, would you all be able to hang on with me for 4 or 5 minutes? Okay? No, I have to ask permission first. Is it okay with the organizers? All right, good. First, the high-speed rail the high-speed rail project, Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, not so much affects the value of Iskandar, Malaysia. Property prices in Greater KL expected to rise. That means Kuala Lumpur prices expected to benefit more from the high-speed rail. Right? I have reasons, we can always come back to that. When two cities are near and there is a strong price differential, prices flow. You can read all about the statistics about the effect of high-speed rail on prices between Paris, London, and so forth. When I said prices of Iskandar, Malaysia will and can possibly be higher than Greater KL, it is not the high-speed rail. It is the rapid transit system. The way people go in and out between two countries. Let me share with you. You will notice that today, if you go to Malaysia, you don't fill a form. Foreigners, not only Singaporeans, coming to Malaysia, scan, passport, thumb. 2 days ago we came, yesterday. Yesterday when we came from KLIA to Singapore, there was a big, huge signage. Foreigners who have come to Malaysia, going out of Malaysia, there are electronic stations where they scan the passport, put the thumb, and they get out of the country. No need to see an immigration officer. Maybe Malaysians are a bit lazy, you know. Okay, I come in, I scan, can go, come back. But this technology already exists. And I read somewhere the poor motorcyclists from JB queuing up in the rain and the hot sun just to earn a little bit of extra money for their family. Now they're going to have scanners for their passport and biometrics. This is very humane, very good. Huh? So, for Iskandar, Malaysia, prices is the RTS. Now, I'm going to answer, because of maybe time constraint, how I will approach your questions on the Iskandar, Malaysia bracket oversupply situation. Ho Chin Soon Research has been involved in quite a lot of talks for property developers, even as up to early this year. property developers selling properties, not necessary to foreigners, but also to Malaysians. For landed properties, branded developers, gated, guarded strata, selling very well. No issue. I think when you talk about residential prices, the perception of a tremendous overhang is in the high-rise, high-end, maybe reclaimed land projects. Last year, Iskandar Investment Berhad had a first property forum. I was one of the invited speakers. There are many of them. And one of the speakers which had done the research was CBRE, Richard CBRE. Before I tell you their research on the Iskandar region and the oversupply figures from them, let me explain a little bit on population. A lot of times, population growth is an indication of economic activity. A location, a city which has tremendous growth in population can only have two reasons. One, the natural population growth is healthy. That means they make a lot of babies. Two, immigration, migration. Like people from Muar, people from Kuantan, people from Batu Pahat, even people from KL come to Johor Bahru to work. So Iskandar Malaysia's statistics over the past 30 years, also if you look at the population census, it is derived from Johor Bahru district. Johor Bahru district, in the 80s when it was plain old Johor Bahru, was already #1 in Malaysia. In the 90s also #1, recently #1. That means the fastest growing region throughout Malaysia is Johor Bahru district, now rebranded as Iskandar Malaysia. What is the compound rate of growth? The highest they hit the last 30 years, 4.8 per annum. Average out sometimes, I would think 4.5% to 5% growth per annum. Average of Malaysia is 2.6. That means more or less almost double the natural population of Malaysia. Now we come to the CBRE statistics. Mr. Chris Boyd. Recently CBRE sold to Sevilles. Sevilles had bought over. They got about 500 over staff. And according to their statistics, the supply figures of residential units coming the next 3 years. That means this year, 2016-2017, is 7% per annum. Population 4.5%, 5%. Oversupply figures 2.5% to 3% per annum. That means overall, if there is a town, 100 units, they have extra 2 or 3 unit supply lah. That means overall, if you got 100,000 units, then you have oversupply. I'm not very good at maths lah. Let's go back to 100. 100, 3 extra units. The next 3 years, you have extra maybe 7, 8 units or 9 units. Okay, to them at 3% overhang for the next 3 years is something manageable. Right? You can check with Mr. Chris Boyd. And not so much concern about the landed property, more on the high end. Now, as we talk about this perception of over tremendous, the key word is not tremendous, of some oversupply, then we ask ourselves, how come the Chinese developers still continue to spend billions, 4.5 billion ringgit R&F paid to the Sultan of Johor, and so forth. Some are Singapore companies. And recently, again, Greenland came in 2.4 billion, and so on. All the slides are there. So in some seminars, I told the audience, I say, sometimes I think we Malaysians, we don't have a vision. We cannot see, but the China developers can see. I'm going to wrap up, Mr. Moderator. I know it's taken so much of your time. How I'm going to wrap up is, let me give you an example. In the year 2011, before the tipping point, I've written a book 5 years ago about the tipping point of Iskandar, Malaysia. You know, when the coastal road was ready, Legoland was operation, the catalytic projects, the Pinewood Studio, the LUCT, which we showed you 5-6 years ago, was nothing. The East Coast Highway, the Eastern Dispersal Link, the Senai Desaru Airport, the amount of infrastructure put in, and the tipping point came in 2012. One Sarawak minister said, "Ho Chin Sui, you come and write a book on Sarawak." I said, "I can't, I don't have the time." In 2011, a Japanese bank invited me to Singapore to speak in front of an international audience. Koreans, Japanese, South Americans, Europe, Americans. One Korean stand up after my presentation on Greater KL and Iskandar. He said, "Mr. Ho, will Iskandar, Malaysia be a white elephant?" I love this kind of question. So I answered the Korean, as I'm going to answer this gentleman. I say, "Sir, can I ask you a question? To answer your question, I ask you a question." You say, "Yes." We put it this way. Where do you see Singapore in 10 to 20 years' time? That was my question. Bearing in mind, Singapore got not enough water, no sand, no petrol, no plantation oil palm. If you think Singapore is going to be a failed nation, Singapore is going down the drain, you don't invest in Iskandar. I told the Korean, point blank, if you believe Singapore will prosper and be able to compete with Shanghai, with the rest of the world, then where you think you should invest? That was my question back to him. Because Iskandar, Malaysia and Singapore, their economies are intertwined. Adik-beradik, brothers and sisters already. Sometimes you see press releases. I haven't read the newspaper about the Maybank. One last one, finish already. I've written a book. You know, when we had birthday, I went with Ishmael, our family, to go and see what it was all about. Because I want to help Malaysians developers. This is national service. What is the perception? What is it all about? Because I remembered very clearly the new paper said there was a riot in KL. Wow, it's havoc, it's riot. I said, how can no? People were singing songs, waving yellow ribbons. So it's a matter of perception. It was peaceful. But the press, maybe sometimes for reasons I don't know paint it a certain way. I wasn't happy as a Malaysian. Of course, there was a riot in Singapore, I think recently, I'm not mistaken. Okay. Let's not get into politics. But I hope the point I'm making is, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said, am I correct, last year, the amount of land and the amount of sea that Singapore has is fixed. The more we reclaim, the less sea we have. You need sea for shipping. And then when Singapore complain about the reclamation in Johor, I say, how can you have no moral right to complain? Because when you reclaim Tuas, you reclaim Pulau Tekong. Malaysia protest last time, nothing happened. It's okay. Look, I'm not against Singaporean reclaiming. Reclaim all you want, no problem. You can even, if you don't like Iskandar, you can build a bridge to Batam Bintang. It's fine with me. You have a right to do what you want, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just to set the record straight, we have enough water. A new water also have.
No, long time ago. A long time ago.
Okay, we are running out of time, but we can't let Eugene go, right? He's been very quiet. So there are two questions for him. Let me read out the second one. Can Singaporeans still make the first bucket of gold from BTO and ECs in view of today's falling resale HDB EC prices? Okay, that's one. This one is a lot more specific. Might be a bit too specific, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think that 750,000 four-room flat in Red Hill is a fair price? I think he has the right not to answer the second question. You might want to talk to him after the whole thing is over. But first question, maybe Eugene can talk about it, about the first bucket of gold from BTO and EC.
Okay, we need to separate the two, BTO and EC. Okay, BTO is new flats, is subsidized housing that is sold by the government, and every one of us who is a Singapore citizen has a right to this bite of the cherry. So it's a way, I think enough has been said about this, all right, that we are able to build our wealth, have a home for ourselves. Okay, so this BTO thing, number one, a lot of people are concerned that if I buy a BTO flat today and the prices, some of them are saying that it's not cheap today. Of course, if you compare it to many years ago, for those of us who have bought our first BTO flat, it is a lot more expensive today. But what is interesting to note is that for all BTO flats outside we have been tracking, the government has not adjusted their price since 2011. It has been delinked from the resale market. All right, so basically the government sets the price according to what they perceive as affordability. All right, so it's meant for first-time buyers. So it's something that the government is giving, presenting to us as Singapore citizens. So in that sense, you are buying at a price which is so-called delinked from market price. It's not affected by the resale market. But what's more important to you is that after you have lived in it for 5 years, will you be able to sell and make money from it? Okay, that's the most important question, because when 5 years later you may have plans, you may want to upgrade, you want to move on and all that kind of thing. And so far from BTO, I have not seen anyone lose money. All right, it is only a matter of when you want to sell, how much you want to sell for. And of course, a lot of that depends on the market conditions. So no one has actually lost money from selling a BTO flat that you bought direct from the government, all right? Because you are buying it, even at the point of sale, you are buying it at technically cheaper, a lot cheaper than the resale price at that point in time. So just to give a comparison, if any BTO exercise goes up today, if you compare the resale price and the current BTO price you're buying at, it's easily 150 to 180,000 cheaper. So you already enjoy that subsidy, all right? So going forward, all right, when 5 years later, you will be able to sell at a higher price when the market progresses. Of course, some people make a lot from the resale because the market has gone up a lot, but some people don't make a lot, depend on when you sell, right? So that's for BTO. For EC, because of the restrictions that the government poses on it, someone asked me just now, I'm a landed property owner, can I buy EC? You can't, okay, for obvious reason. Okay, so EC is targeted basically at the sandwich class. That means those people who are neither here nor there. Okay, for example, they are possibly of a higher income bracket than your typical HDB owner, but they are not as well-to-do as those typical private property buyers. So that's why they call the sandwich class. So because to cater to aspirations, the government has set aside this EC category, which therefore, in order to buy the EC, they have set very strict criteria. But actually, if you look at EC and you look at a private condo, is actually the same product, except one product, the EC has got restrictions and eligibility conditions, which determine who can buy, who cannot buy, whereas the private property in the same location has got no restrictions. Whoever has the money can buy, right? But you fast forward this 5 years later, after your 5-year minimum occupation period, technically the two products, you put it side by side, is the same. It's the same. You can sell to a Singaporean, you can sell to a PR. Except for EC, you cannot sell to a foreigner until 10 years later. So, which means if you are buying something at launch, because ECs have come with restrictions, typically at launch period, if you compare side by side, it is cheaper than the same private condo in the same location by easily 15-20%. So you already enjoy that headroom, right, to make the extra money when the time comes where you're able to resell. Okay, I think if you look at you have time, you go and look through the different websites. Many studies have been done on EC buyers, those that buy and subsequently resell. Okay, so there's a lot of studies to show that you can actually you do make money. Okay, you do make money. Of course, some people are concerned. Today, I'm buying at a price where EC is already like $800 per square foot. You know? Would it be possible to then still make money? A similar condo in the same area is selling at $1,000 per square foot. So you already make $200 per square foot at point of purchase. All right. So later on, depending on again how the market progresses, you should be, if you time it correctly, you should still be able to profit from that deal. So these are the two, I would say, the two types of markets which, if you are eligible for, all right, if you are able to get in, you would be able to profit from it if you time your buying and selling and appropriately. Okay. So the second question on the 750,000. Okay, to answer that question, if you look at, okay, incidentally, every one of you can actually download the. You can have this information on your on your own phone, or you can download the HDB mobile app. The HDB mobile app is you can track transaction prices. So just now somebody asked 750, I would say, wow, so high. But actually, when you go and check the price, okay, recent transaction is 750. Red Hill Road, Block 75B is 750,000. There's one unit there done at 800,000. Yeah. So these are two recent transactions. So if you ask me, is 750 a fair price to pay in today's market? It is today's price. Okay. So going forward, would you then? I believe your question is, if I buy at 750, can I still make money or not? All right. Yeah. So a bit hard to answer this question now, but let's look at it in another way. A similar size private property in the same location, Red Hill area, in today's price would be double the 750. You'll be paying about 1.5 mil. All right, for a similar size unit in the area. So the question is this: if I buy a HDB flat today, 5 years time, what is the market 5 years down the road? All right. So what do you think? Will the market be higher than today or worse off than today? What would you think? Okay, personally, okay, if you look historical from the time property data was available until now, we have gone through several peaks and troughs. Okay, several peaks and troughs. There's ups and downs in between. But if you were to draw a line over time, all right, over time, this trend line points upwards. All right. So similarly, going forward, would property price in Singapore continue to appreciate over time? Okay, we are known as the tiny red dot. We only have so much land. All right, unlike all right, our neighbors, all right, who have got so much land. So some is a matter of supply demand. All right, over time. So I believe most of us can answer that question. Over time, all right, would property prices appreciate over time? I'm quite sure majority of people will say yes. All right, it's only a matter of timing the sale and timing the purchase. So again, if you buy at 750, but you can't hold over time, you're forced to sell in between. And if you're forced to sell in a market where the market is weak, then you will suffer a loss. But if you're able to ride over a longer term, all right, perhaps you would make a profit even at 750. All right, so that's my take.
Thank you, Eugene. I think we have way exceeded the time. I mean, the organizers keep looking at me, but I think last word to David. This is a question. Commercial property prices have also gone up very high. Recent launches Crown at Robinson 3.5 to 3.8, based on current office rental of about 950 on average for 645 square feet. Can't even break even in 20 years. How is it still good to go into commercial property? This one, tough one.
All right, okay. Since you mentioned about offices, okay, I know we are behind time, so to cut it short, I say this, I'll give you a figure, then you'll realize how much potential we have in a commercial property right now. Okay. Can anyone tell me what is the grade A? All these are official figure, means you can Google for it. Can anyone tell me what is the grade A? We use grade A now because grade A is a barometer for the market. Can anyone tell me what is a grade A office renter in Singapore before Lehman Brothers? Anyone? I heard 20, Now class. Before Lehman Brothers, the Singapore office renter, grade A, average UR figure, means 50% above this, 50% below this, average, $18.80 per square foot, PSF. That's what the office tenant are paying in the office before Lehman Brothers. So 50% pay above this, 50% pay below this is average. Can anyone tell me what's the average grade A office renter UR figure today? Anyone? Anyone? Sorry? I don't have the exact, I forgot the exact, but it is about 11 plus to 12. I give it 11.50. Does this tell a story? Does this answer your query, the gentleman who asked this question, whether is there still money to make in commercial market in Singapore? Class. Before Lehman Brothers, tenants are paying $18.80 average for offices in the CBD. But too bad, Lehman Brothers, the whole world crashed. Cannot blame everything, the whole world crashed. Then it recovered. After so much recovery, we are only 11.50, plus minus, maybe 12 plus minus. The gap between the last peak and now is about $6, which is, if I use the base today, it's another 50% increase. And if you do believe me, in Singapore, it's always proven correct. In Singapore real estate market, whenever it recovers, it will always be beyond the last peak. Agree? Proven in Singapore. I cannot say the same for other countries. But in Singapore, it's always like that. Once it recovers, it may take years to recover. Once it recovers, it's always beyond the last peak. And I don't want to say beyond last peak. I just say, let's go back to the last peak. If we go back to the last peak, we are talking about another $6 more increment in the rental you can collect. You know how much is the capital gain you can have? Because in commercial industrial, you'll learn this in my workshop. Commercial industrial selling price is all pegged to your renter because investor look at the returns. If I pay you this price, how much rental am I getting? If I can get this kind of rental, I'll pay you this price. So when your rental goes up, means your selling price goes up, means your capital gain will also follow. Right? So I think this will explain everything. You can tell me anything. Let's work on the figures. We are still so far behind from the last peak office renter. So there are a lot of potential. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Yes.
Alfred, you wanted to have some final words?
Oh yeah, just one last point. I think I'm just between you and Lucky Draw. I'm so glad to hear the future of Iskandar is dependent on Singapore prosperity. Because I think as a nation, we have progressed well for the last 50 years under our previous leaders. And I think we will progress another 50 years. Would you agree with me? Then having said that, then we should invest in Singapore. But I mean, you know what I mean, right? Because every market has a cycle. It's just that for Singaporeans, if you qualify, like what Eugene say, BTO and EC, these are really low-hanging fruits. Don't need to think about the market trend or whatever. These are government gift to Singaporeans. But that's provided you're Singaporeans and you qualify. But for those of us who have passed this stage, it's not so easy. Commercial properties, there are potentials, but at the same time, there are also a lot of headwinds, which you really need to learn more and understand more. Industry is the same, And then if you're talking about residential property investments, again, you have to factor interest rates. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel, which is what? There may be changes in terms of property cooling measures. But I think from today's session, a lot of us are quite interested in Malaysia properties, which is why we learn a lot from Mr. Ho. But why we like Malaysia properties, I think whatever it is, because of the close proximity, and there are certain potential that we can look out for. But like what I say, if you want to venture into Malaysia, unless you have relatives in Malaysia or you really love to go Malaysia for holidays, I have one friend who previously bought a resort home in Kuantan. That was many years. So he has been bringing his children when they were age 5 until age 15, every year go Kuantan. Until the children swear and tell the father, you bring me to Kuantan again. Shall not continue. But I think there are also certain prospects and futures in Malaysia, but make sure you do your homework because that is different from our countries. There's a lot of rules and regulations that we really need to understand, currency, interest rates, which is why I say high-risk investment. But high risk also could potentially mean high risk. Not true. High risk doesn't mean high return. Next week, I'll be having quite a lot of group of people coming to see me. Previously, they say, I got into this investment because they promised me 20%, 25% per annum, but zero. So high risk doesn't mean high return. Okay, so with that, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Alfred. I'll hand the time back to the organizers, but please join me to thank the panel here for their contribution.